Today, we're talking about this map of the 13 core archetypes that, when banded together, have the potential to rebuild civilization. A very grandiose claim indeed, but we live in extraordinary times. Times where the tribes, the cultures, the societies and nations that once held us together, that nurtured us throughout human history, have fallen away. So many people are cast adrift into a sea of nihilism, atomization, without roots in anything. And as a result of this great pain, this great social collapse many people feel, there's going to be a rebirth of tribes. In fact, who doesn't want to live in a village with their friends? So this video is about remembering our own natural design. Where do we fall within this chart? And how do we start banding together with the others that can bring about a holistic team? A team of that's actually capable of not just building a business, not just building an intentional community, but building a real culture. So let's dive straight into understanding the map here. And to understand any good map, we need to understand the cardinal axis points first. On the vertical axis, we have it between the spiritual kingdom and God, right? And then the physical kingdom and Earth. And generally, people tend to be oriented more upward towards the abstract or towards the spiritual, or they're oriented downward towards the concrete or towards the physical. And this is a good, analysis for you. Are you more oriented towards ideas in the spiritual kingdom or the earth in the physical kingdom? And then on the horizontal axis plane, we have the contrast between the soul and the daemon. And I think these are the two forces within the heart of most men, right? The soul is going to be more associated with family, love, surrender, and peace. The daemon is more associated with excellence, ambition, glory, striving. It's more outward oriented or yang. The soul is more inward oriented or yin. And to understand the archetypes here, we need to understand the two powers that drive people. In my view, there's two primal spiritual powers in life. And that is the power of surrender and the power of desire. These are fundamental forces within life. If you have tons of burning desire, you overcome all obstacles, you build empires into the world, you achieve goals. If you have full surrender, you become a sage, you become a great father, a great community builder in many ways, because you are more of the way of water, right? So when the soul is surrendered upward towards God, you tend to manifest the mystic archetype. This is seen in Eastern spiritual teachings a lot, right? The yogi, the mystic, the tantra, the Taoist sage, right? It's the soul surrendered towards God. The power of the soul, surrender and love, oriented downward towards the earth, tends to produce father archetypes, lover archetypes, artists, right? This is more like type B in general, right? So the power of the soul is love and surrender. The power of the daemon is desire and ambition, right? When that is oriented upwards, this tends to produce philosophers and occultists, also visionaries and architects, right? When the daemon is oriented downward towards the earth, this tends to produce warriors, people who have a lot of skill and ambition into the earth, and also merchants and builders, right? So we're going to go deeper into every single one of these archetypes, but this is the general thesis of the map. Is there's two different fundamental driving forces, the yin and the yang, and then there's two dimensions in which those forces are manifested. So the reason I created this map, right, is because within my friend groups, I've lived in much of the spiritual worlds, the spiritual communities, the crypto entrepreneurial worlds. I've experienced I have a lot of friends in the normal world as well. And one great divide I notice is what I term between the vibey left, right, and the Promethean intellectual right. So the vibey left, let's understand these guys. The vibey left are these are your festival cats, the eco-village, people. They live from the heart first. In fact, the purpose of life to the vibey left, which is this whole entire sphere over here, right? There's archetypes inside of it. But the purpose of life to the vibey left, right, is communal love. Love is the purpose of life. These people are much more concerned with relationships than ideas. And they tend, because of this orientation, they tend to be more open, communal, expressive, and endlessly inclusive, right? They throw the best parties, they host the deepest shares, they radiate warmth. And when I'm talking about all these archetypes on this map, I want to be really clear that these are a lot more masculine oriented archetypes. This map is for men because I run a brotherhood. We're building a business. I, have built a lot of teams before, but I can't wait to include more women in the tribe and more women on this map. So note that. And the second thing is all of these archetypes, I'm going to be speaking of the mature versions of them. These are the people you want in the tribe, right? And there's immature versions of all of these. Obviously, like the vibes guy, the immature versions can be really ungrounded, narcissistic in ways. There's many problems where we'll talk about it, but these are mature versions. So the mature vibes guy, right? They see the world through vibes and heart, not analysis. And I know one of the a really great vibes guy. He really occupies the center well. He's the one who's constantly facilitates entire volleyball matches multiple times a week. He is full of zesty vibes at festivals. He's like the prince of the festival. He's talking to everyone, so charismatic. And he's the one who's going to host midnight swim races, cuddle puddles, telling stories. They're really operating from the soul, from play, and they're champions because of it, right? So their gifts are connection, openness, vitality, joy, mastering and creating inclusive community spaces. They're always trying to include everyone. I love these people, right? But they also have a shadow, and that shadow is naivete, a lack of boundaries, and they're pretty anti-structure. Their weakness is in structure and discernment. They think with their hearts, not their heads, which is beautiful, but sometimes blind. It's hard to scale what they create, right? So the vibes guys, right? If we look at, let's say, the spiritual community tends to orient pretty hard left, which is back to nature, more indigenous practices. They think love and light and community is the purpose of life. It's beautiful. But their types of villages that they build tends to be eco-villages or spiritual communes, which tend to lack structure and vision. They tend to lack a deeper ambition, and hence everyone's transient. They're hyper feminine. It's basically a matriarchy within the spiritual community, right? And that's because there's this deep conflict between the vibey left, the people who are very comfortable in a Burning Man festival, cuddle puddle or something like that, which is, a radically inclusive community. They have a deep conflict with the Prometheans. They don't speak the language of the Promethean right? The vibes guy builds community, but not infrastructure. He wants freedom from hierarchy. He lives for the moment, and he sees the Promethean shadows, not their light. So there's this deep conflict between this community and the Promethean right. Let's understand the Promethean right, which is usually who I speak to on my main channel, Wisdom Warriors, and a lot of people who are going to be attracted to this content, right? So the Promethean right, the Promethean lives for excellence, innovation, mastery. They are pro-tech, pro-order. What they want to live for is a mind on fire. They're aristocratic in their values, powerful in will, right? They like to build systems. And the Promethean right, they're often socially alienated. They were the ones who were awkward at parties, mistrusting of the vibes people. The Promethean tends to value truth over harmony, vision over connection. He has some autism. If we think of the tech bros, the crypto community, a lot of the vitalist right, as well as some hyper turbo merchants like Alex Hermosi, they have some autism or they're straight up psychopathic. And they never been included with the cool cats. Look at someone like Jeff Bezos, right? Now he's trying to be a cool cat later in life. So because of their alienation sometimes from the vibes guy, they have a bit of a superiority complex. Also, they tend to be intelligent and driven. And this creates a superiority complex and some arrogance. And this is their shadow, right? But they have these deep gifts, right? The Prometheans are the ones who are going to build the infrastructure. They're going to build the future. They want to go explore Mars. They want to build on the frontier. They want to develop science, medicine, philosophy to its heights. They want to reach the profound through innovation, intellectual power, civilizational building. If you want to build a civilization, you're definitely on the Promethean right? So, the shadow, again, is we talked about it. And the conflict is the Promethean builds infrastructure, but not community, right? So the issue is I've talked about this on other videos, is if we look at something like the Praxis community or the network state people, they tend to be very Promethean. They want to build into the frontier. They love tech. They think ideological alignment is what's going to build community, but it's not. What builds community is the vibes guys, the people who bring the music, the stories, the dance, the ritual, the heart, right? That deep sense of like this raw experience of being alive with your tribe and having these experiences together, right? Like falling in love as a tribe with each other and towards an ideal is the thing that's actually going to build real culture, not business and ideological agreements, right? So there's a conflict here is the Promethean seeks hierarchy through merit. They like excellence. Excellence is one of their driving principles in life. And because of this, they like distinction. Distinction is one of the most aristocratic values. Is if you have more glory, excellence, and power in your soul, of course you want to be able to give that and be recognized for it, right? Hence, this creates hierarchies. And hierarchies are built into nature. Inequality is built into nature. These things are important, but the spiritual left is trying to completely deconstruct these things instead of try to merge and bring balance to the force, right? So the Prometheans tend to look down on the vibey left the same way the vibey left tends to look down at Prometheans, right? So when I was at this mansion party with a bunch of Prometheans at a crypto conference, right? Oh my God. It was so over-indexed on intelligence. Everyone there was like a developer. They were so freaking smart. A lot of them had a lot of money, right? And we were just talking about everything, tech, decentralization, community, X, Y, and Z. But like, A, it was mostly men. B, there wasn't a deep vibe. Like no one knew how to dance there. I love fucking dancing, right? No one knew how to dance. People didn't they don't speak the language of normies, and they definitely don't speak the language of the vibey left, right? And this is a problem because if we want to create community, you need a synthesis of both, right? So the vibes guys and the Promethean are both developed, but they're polarized. And we've kind of gone through what this all is. So this creates the fundamental axis of polarity. And some people are very extreme left or very extreme right. A lot of these archetypes I have listed here are somewhere in between. But to understand the other archetypes, we need to understand the vertical column, which is the bridge. The vertical column, these three figures and their corresponding archetypes, right, are the bridge between God and earth. And in doing so, they're forging alliances, mentoring, teaching, and creating alliances between the extremes, right? Because you need the vibes king and you need the Promethean builders, but those aren't the people who actually build culture. They build community or they build infrastructure, right? So the shaman, the king, and the farmer are what build culture. Let me be very clear on that, and this is how. So to understand this, we should probably start by understanding the king and queen. So the king and queen archetype, right? The king generally is someone who is multifaceted, right? You can think of the king or queen archetype as the tribe entrepreneur, right? The tribe entrepreneur is someone who's ventured to the outer limits of many archetypes. They can tell stories with the bards, they can train with the warriors, they can contemplate the infinite with the shamans, and debate with the intellectuals, and flow with the vibey left. Every archetype recognizes something of themselves in the king. The king is someone who can speak the language of many people, right? Yet the king never fully belongs to any of these other roles. Only the shamans and the farmers truly sense the full depth of the king. In fact, the king archetype often feels like he can meet different communities and different people, but he's rarely met himself because he has a very multifaceted inner nature. And the king is also rarely the best at anything. Like he loves training with the warriors, but he's not going to be the best person in the gym. Like he loves, speaking and writing with the philosophers, but he's not going to be the next great philosopher. He's fluent in everything, but mastery in only a couple places, right? And the queen is very similar, right? The queen the queen's role in my mind, they tend to lead more towards the left, the soul in general. The queen usually comes from the vibey left. They're communal oriented, they're inclusion oriented, progression, like social progression oriented. But they've also explored the other domains. And hence the queen and the king start to merge into the center to create this union. In general, like an ideal king and queen role, someone would be more like the heart-centered, inclusive, creating the glue in the community, deeply understanding people and relationships, while the king is maybe more so forging alliances, expanding the vision, right? Inspiring people towards a dream, and the queen or the oracle is helping amplify that dream, correct it, give insight, like lead a little bit from behind, but leading together nonetheless, right? So the primary role of these two people is obviously to unite heaven and earth, right? To shoot towards ideals, towards perhaps a more spiritual and higher embodiment, right? But ground that fully into the earth. Hence, the kings and tribes entrepreneurs' main role is to be inspired with a vision, to be very grounded with that vision. That creates true inspiration, right? And then to start building the team, building the relationships around it, harmonizing diverse roles towards a cultural vision together, right? So this is where real leadership of the future arises, right? Having reconciled the opposites within themselves, they lead not through domination, but through coherence, right? The thing about the ReTribalize project and the decentralized communities of the future, they're going to be free association, meaning that if you're king or queen, if your leaders aren't great, you could just go find a different tribe. Hopefully, the ReTribalize project and our ReTribalize app, which we're launching, allows for a diversity, a real diversity of different projects, communities, and ideals. And therefore, you can join them, and if they suck, you can leave and go find another one. The problem with a lot of the intentional communities, as I've spoken about before, the vibey left, is it almost becomes homogenous. If you go to a spiritual community in Bali, in Boulder, or let's say Tulum, they almost all feel the same. It's because they don't have like real ideals and real leadership. And also a lot of these communities are underfunded. They don't have real culture. A lot of the off-grid people are just kind of the farmer archetype. They're lacking the other broad array, right? Hence, they're lacking, what was I going to say? They're lacking real founder energy that's leading towards an ideal. And this is what the king and queen need to embody: founder energy in tribes, right? I'll have more videos about tribe entrepreneurs later. So the final note about the king and queen is I think there's a lot of ideas in our zeitgeist, and especially in the personal development space, about becoming a king, embodying king energy. And I think every man can embody king energy, meaning that he is sovereign and leader in his own life. But I don't think everyone should try to become the king, in the sense of the king's role is uniting other aristocrats of the soul, right? So if you embody king energy in the sense of like coming into your own sovereignty, that sovereignty may look like, man, I just really love to have my hands in the earth to build infrastructure, tiny home villages, and a permaculture garden. Great. You would naturally fall into a more farmer role. And I bet you're more traditionalist in your values. Maybe you're skeptical of the deep philosophers or the deep mystics. Like, your role isn't to lead with vision. Your role is to be an entrepreneur, to ally yourself with other aristocrats of the soul to build bigger dreams, right? So like becoming a real king, it's not this egotistical thing. It's the fact that you go first and you unite people around a dream, right? Like if you do that, you are naturally embodying the king role. And especially if you start building alliances and creating harmony within the group, you're embodying the king or queen role, right? So don't try to become a king. Try to become what you are. Try to embody your deep essence with sovereignty. And you're going to naturally find your place on this map. There's two ideas from ancient Greece that are very interesting. One is esoterica harmonia. When we come into deep harmony with our dharma, with our inner essence, we start to play the note of our soul. This is joy. This is fulfillment. This is alignment. And when we play that note, right, we start to find the others who play diverse notes of excellence. And this is what creates music. We're trying to create music as a tribe. This is why the archetypal map is important, right? So find your note, my friends. So apart from the king and queen, right, we have the shamans. And generally in my life, the shaman figures have been my best friends, the shaman warrior figures, really. The shaman is someone universally loved, but also slightly removed. These tend to be the mentors, right? We can think of like a really good teacher, a really good spiritual leader, someone who's more concerned with the heavenly kingdom, with ideas, with spiritual development, but they're also not very polarizing or extreme. In fact, they can see from multiple different perspectives, right? They are concerned with tending to the spiritual kingdom, living simply and living morally. And these priest types tend to be best friends with the king, right? They help facilitate social order, social harmony, social cohesion, and they're like a king but oriented upwards towards the spiritual kingdom, right? And their opposite of the shaman is the farmer. Although the farmer and the shaman occupy the same exact spectrum, they're very similar. It's just the farmer is oriented towards the earth, while the shaman's oriented towards the spiritual. And one note about the farmer, about the warriors, about the people more oriented towards the earth, it doesn't mean they're not spiritual. Their spirituality is more embodied in the concrete versus in the meditation or ideas, right? So the farmer is the reflection of the shaman, same energy, but focused on cultivating the physical kingdom. One of my best friends really embodies the farmer archetype. He loves to run permaculture gardens, right? He is like a Taoist practitioner of the earth. He loves cultivating nature. He runs a vineyard right now. He's very dutiful, right? He's very grounded in the physical reality. He has a family. He's patient, cultivation of practical wisdom. And like grounded, practical, connected to the natural cycles and rhythms. And he's more traditionalist in his ideas, right? He goes to church. He has more of a trad wife, right? He's a lot more simple. And because of this, he's a natural ally of kings and shamans. They have a distaste for the far extremes of the left and right, right? The pure vibey Burning Man left and the overly abstract intellectual right. It's kind of funny to them. They seek to harmonize first and foremost. And the farmer, how he does this and why he's a little bit different from the king is like the farmer archetype, the craftsman archetype. Generally, they're more yin, meaning they're not like leading and inspiring towards a vision, but like people feel very open to the farmer archetype, right? They share things with the farmer archetype. The farmer archetypes is freaking awesome. So these are the three occupying the center column, right? And then other places on this map we need to understand, right, is we talked a little bit about the powers of the soul and the daemon, but let's talk about the father. A lot of people, a lot of really great people occupy a general region in this lower left quadrant, right? Fathers and lovers, for instance. So the father archetype is concerned with maintaining the immediate physical world around a family. He's allied with the farmer and craftsman. He's more yin. The real father is someone who's fully surrendered into responsibility, really. Responsibility for his work, his family, his community, his life, right? Hence, he's very grounded. So he leans more towards the physical kingdom and then also communal orientation, right? So that's why he's like bottom, lower left, right? The lover, I paired with him, although the lover's a little bit more different. The lover is like the single father. He's concerned with the romance of life. The lover archetype is concerned with making life romantic, on the whimsies. The purpose of life is to court life itself, to take big trips, to engage in good conversations around the fire, and to bring love and joy to all. The lover's great, right? Both of these archetypes, they embody the power of the soul, of surrender and love. They surrender downward, right, towards the earth, into responsibility. The lover into romance. So the lover is very close with the artist, and the artist and bard placement, these are hard. The artist occupies somewhere here on the spectrum. Some artists are oriented more upwards towards God, some more towards the earth, but the artist archetype is someone who brings soul into material form. They're in a creative flow state most of the time. They're more type B. The great artists I know, right? They're not like forcing work. They're just like, they're just always doing it. They're always crafting something. They got good vibes, good energy, and they have more like principles, or just like, they're more in flow than in like daemon, will, and vision. And this makes them more relaxed, a bit more surrendered. The shadow of the artist is obviously like the guys who are just stuck doing MDMA, smoking a lot of weed, doing a lot of drugs, very ungrounded, maybe untending to the physical world. I think I should put the artist up here somewhere. Let me know like where you think the artist should go and which archetypes am I missing on this map. I think I'm missing a few, but these are the main ones I'm looking for. So if we go up here towards the bard, well, actually, let's start with the mystic and priest. Again, the mystic is someone who's surrendered upward towards God. The spiritual kingdom is, what they're oriented towards. The mature mystic is the spiritual heart of the community. These guys are amazing because they're so surrendered, right? And they're also very wise in that. And they're the complementary opposite of the philosopher. Both are teachers. Most people who develop into a mature archetype up here become mentors. This is the mentor plane. This is the builder plane, right? So, and then we go to the bard. The bard archetype, in fact, our friend Steven, who was in the men's academy, he just came out to Tulum. We're traveling the world with a small team here. Steven embodies the warrior bard energy, which is what I was looking for actually as the next addition to the team. So the bard is someone who channels divine inspiration through artistic expression and tells stories, really, right? They're, again, more type B, more like vibe soul energy than daemon will. But the bard is concerned with experiences, with the mythos of life, with the stories of the past. Stephen, for instance, loves the stories of Mithras, the stories of Odin, the mythologies of the past, right? He thinks these stories are very important because they tell the story of culture and instruct the soul on how to live, right? So the bard is very important because they carry forward traditions and legends that are instructive, but they also craft the stories of the present age. And these are important because, for instance, like if you had someone eulogizing or telling the story of your life, it gives you perspective about where you're at in your own hero's journey, about where the tribe's at in their hero's journey. And these people are great. The bards are great around a campfire, right? And when you have, let's say you're building a business right now, you're building a tribe around a business, which is what I recommend. You're going to have a lot of builders, a lot of Prometheans in your corner. And a lot of these guys, because they're so purpose oriented, are going to be very disciplined. But it's nice to have someone who's a little bit more chill, who's telling the stories, who's facilitating more the heart of the community, bringing humor, mythos, psychic connection. These guys are natural allies with kings and heroes. Also, the bard is a natural ally or often merged with the warrior. Some warriors, again, the warriors in the bottom lower right-hand quadrant, the warrior is the daemon, the will to power, manifested into the earth in a disciplined way, right? And the warrior is someone who embodies discipline and physical action, right? A pure warrior archetype on one hand is very black and white, very clear on right and wrong. Their purpose is to protect. A warrior, someone very good in hierarchies, in command and following orders, right? And the higher expression of a pure warrior is the general, right? The general who's organizing the Prometheans, right? Who's like accepting orders and like marshaling the world. But oftentimes a great warrior is also a bard. The warrior bard energy is strong out there, and I fucking love this energy. And this reveals something interesting about this map that I stumbled upon, is a lot of people who aren't, let's say, like someone occupying the center column here, they're diagonals, right? So they're warrior bards, or they're father philosophers, or they're artist occultists, right? There's like this diagonal. So a lot of you might be occupying a diagonal in here, or like there's like an opposite quality you could start cultivating in tension with your soul. And this is one of my theses about self-actualization for the leaders of tomorrow, is that all of us usually experience a conflict between the soul and the daemon. The soul, for me, right, it wants family, friends, it loves a festival camp, fishing in the forest, like a family. Like, I really love relationships and vibes, right? And the soul part of me just wants that all the time. The daemon in me, right, it wants to literally build a new civilization. It wants to be a great leader. It wants to like be a great philosopher, make content like this, right? So there's this great conflict between ambition and love in my soul, between surrender and purpose. And this conflict, because of the strength of this conflict, this is what kind of makes me a great tribe entrepreneur, more of the king archetype. But everyone else also has this conflict inside of them, but this conflict may be more isolated to certain archetypes, like the bard, warrior energy, the philosopher, father energy, right? The artist, occultist energy. So finding this conflict inside of your soul, where is that, is going to create this harmonious tension, this generative tension that leads to self-actualization. And generally what we want to do is, some people, if your dharma is to hone in on one archetype and become the best vibes guy ever, to be the best community facilitator, throw the greatest parties, you just want to vibe out your whole life, freaking do it. If you want to be a great mystic and that you just want to surrender to God, I know someone who's doing 4 to 6 hours of Kriya yoga for 10 years straight. Like, his orientation is so hard towards the mystic. Do it. But a lot of us also, what we want to do is expand our breadth, right? There's depth and there's breadth to maturity. So breadth would be like expanding more into the full lower left quadrant, right? And that looks like becoming more of a farmer, while becoming more of an artist, while becoming a better father, right? Really expanding into the breadth of this community. And as we expand our breadth and depth and through lifetimes, my belief is that we slowly orient onto one archetype, or we become a king, right? So let's briefly cover the merchant builder as such an important archetype. The merchant builder archetype is generally the first person you need to find when you're starting a ReTribalize project. Before we talk about the merchant builder, I just want to quickly share the project we're working on, right? ReTribalize.ai. But this is our tool that, me and the team have been working together intensively on. Oh, shit. Did I just do most of this without it? I did, huh? Whatever. We've been working on this project very intensively. This is an AI matchmaker designed to connect you to the most aligned people in the entire world who want to build a village with you, right? And in this, you can sign up here, sign in, and you'll start getting matches and start looking for the other archetypes that complement you. It's free right now. Come join us, link in the description below. But in this, one of the first things you want to do in your project, right, is find the merchant builder archetype, right? So the merchant builder archetype is someone who expresses the daemon, the Promethean energy, into the material world. They create, they construct. These people are really good at building businesses, right? Look for like an Alex Hormozy, Elon Musk figure. They're concerned with conquering the frontiers of business. And these guys are so important because we need to build an economic engine if we want to liberate a team towards building new culture, right? So we need a really, really, really good merchant builder, really good Prometheans, right? So generally, these guys will start the team, the merchants and the warriors, the engineers and the architects, right? So the merchant builder energy is awesome. The turbo merchant, though, you get into like Alex Hormozy territory. And when Alex Hormozy territory becomes king, when Elon Musk's become kings, the problem is that they over prioritize the capitalist, ambition-oriented world, and therefore they build businesses, but they don't build cultures that last because they lack some of these other archetypes that are so freaking important. So one of the biggest concerns with ReTribalize projects, if you're starting it as a business, which I recommend, is don't over-index on the merchant builders, right? Look for diversity of excellences while building a business. So the final archetype here is the occultist scribe, right? They're kind of like the bard, but on the daemonic end of the spectrum. And they record divine knowledge. They're a keeper of hidden wisdom. They're great mentors, right? They're great teachers. All of the teachers of the next great academy, which we're going to build, are up here. So that's the archetypal map. And again, this is currently masculine centric. Can't wait to get more women involved here and to build the main team. And you can find this map on retribalize.org. I have it in the top bar. You can go through it all and click on it. And again, if you want to start building your dream team, find the others. My friends, there's so many people who want to build communities, and it's time we get on it. And to build a community, if all you need to do is find 1 or 2 best friends who share your dream. And that's why we built the ReTribalize matchmaker. And this thing is going to be freaking awesome. So come join us, my friends. Peace.